Good morning, boys and girls. I hope that you guys are doing well. I miss you guys. Today we are reading a fun Clifford story. It's a Clifford fairy tale called Snow White and the Seven Puppies. Here we go. Snow White and the Seven Puppies. Hello, I'm Emily Elizabeth, and this is Clifford, my big red dog. Every night we cuddle up and my dad tells us a story. My dad loves making Clifford and me the stars of the story. Tonight we are reading Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Once upon a time there was a princess named Snow White. Snow White was honest, kind, and giving. She lived in a very big castle with her very big puppy, Clifford, and they had lots of adventures there. Snow White's wicked stepmother, the queen, lived in the castle too. The queen had tricked everyone in the land into thinking she was kind and giving, but Snow White knew the truth. Every evening, the queen asked her magic mirror the same question. Magic mirror in my hand, who's the most loved in the land? And every evening the magic mirror gave the same response. You, my queen, you are the most loved person in the land. On this night, the queen asked the mirror in her usual question. However, the mirror did not reply with the usual answer. Instead, it showed the image of Snow White and Clifford and said, Snow White is the most loved in the land. This made the queen very angry. I must get rid of that perfect Snow White, she cried. Snow White and Clifford were playing hide-and-go-seek when they overheard the queen's plans. So they came up with a plan of their own. Snow White and Clifford would run away. Snow White and Clifford escaped into the woods. The further they walked, the darker the woods became. Even with her friend by her side, Snow White was scared. Just then they saw a light coming from the house in the distance. Snow White went inside the house and found a mess. There was mud and dirt and fur everywhere. There were 7 tiny unwashed bowls, 7 tiny unmade beds, and 7 tiny chewed-up balls. Who lived here, she wondered. Clifford took a sniff and let out a friendly howl. He knew who lived here. It was 7 tiny puppies. Hello, I'm Snow White, she said, and this is Clifford. Snow White saw that each dog bowl had a name on it. She studied each pup carefully. Why, you're Fluffy, Jumpy, and Spot, she said, pointing. And you must be Drooly and Diggy and Fetchy and Tiny. The puppies wagged their tails, happy to have made 2 new friends. Snow White and Clifford needed somewhere to live, and this messy house needed some help, and so Snow White got to work. She ran bubble baths for Diggy, and she played catch with Fetchy, and she made extra meals for Tiny. Snow White fit right in. Clifford, on the other hand, had a little trouble. Snow White knew just how to help Clifford fit in. Soon the house was in order, and Snow White, Clifford, and the puppies became a happy family. Every night, Snow White would tell them a bedtime story to Clifford and the puppies. Before she knew it, they were all sound asleep. Meanwhile, the queen was alone in the castle. While Snow White had gone, it must be the most loved in the land, she thought. Magic mirror in my hand, who is the most loved in the land, she asked. The mirror once again showed the image of Snow White. She was surrounded by Clifford and her new puppy friends. Snow White was even more loved than before. The queen was not happy. Early the next morning, Snow White heard a knock at the door. It was an old woman selling apples as red as Clifford's fur. The old lady smiled and offered Snow White her shiniest apple. Just as Snow White raised up the apple to her lips, the dogs ran outside. They were barking and growling because they smelled trouble. But Clifford and the puppies were too late. Snow White had bit into the apple, and she fell on the ground into a magical sleep. Clifford took one sniff and knew who the old woman was. It was the wicked queen in disguise. She pulled out her magic wand. Bet all Fetchy saw was a stick. He leapt toward the queen and sunk his teeth into the wand. Lightning shot out of a wand and hit Clifford with a jolt. Suddenly he began to grow and grow and grow. Now Clifford was bigger than ever. He let out the biggest, scariest growl. This time even the queen was scared. She ran away as fast as she could. The puppies gathered around the sleeping Snow White, and Clifford gave her a big slobbery lick. Snow White opened her eyes. True love's kiss had broken the spell. Snow White gave Clifford a big hug, or at least she tried. And the queen, she was never heard from again. The end. So cute. Awesome. I hope you guys have a great day today. Bye.